here as guests, as speakers. First of the night that will speak, once we get going, will probably be Keith from the Hampshire Liberty Alliance. He's going to give us a brief idea of what they do. And we're going to try to get these people down here all the time to speak on issues and liberty issues, because Lord knows we get a lot of liberty issues. But before we get started, why don't we all stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag? I do that 1940 style like we really mean it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a brief prayer. Almighty God, thanks for bringing everybody here together. Help us to keep things going in this town, in this state, and in this nation. Give our leaders the wisdom and the guts to get things back on the right track. Amen. Amen. Come on, a special way of praying tonight. So tonight we're going to have, we will have Keith from the Hampshire Liberty Alliance. We also have Lorie Sanborn, who is a rep for the Hampshire State Legislature. She's going to speak. I think probably after Keith is done with this presentation. We've got her husband, Andy, who is a stalwart conservative in the New Hampshire Senate. And we've got our guy, Bill O'Brien, here, as usual. And I don't have to say anything about Bill. Everybody knows who he is. Who did I forget? Anybody? I want to hurt anybody's feelings. You know, this is the type of group you can always speak up and pop right in there and don't be nervous, because that's what we encourage. So with no further ado, let me say this. I want you to pay attention to one thing. There are a lot of huge liberty issues going on. National Defense Authorization Act. There are some bills that have been introduced to change that legislation, because a lot of people are very unhappy with it as a major liberty issue, where you can be picked up, arrested in the middle of the night without anything whatsoever. You don't have to go into it. The other thing, we were in the State House Monday, and we are trying to get a bill passed to get anything related to Agenda 21. These ICLEI cities, of which we have 4 in the state, which are United Nations type organizations. There's probably 700 in the country, and they are outrageous in their intention and in their history. We want them out of the state. But I hear that Bill O'Brien, as of yesterday, introduced a bill to push the United Nations out of the USA. Is that true, Bill?
We passed a resolution in the House.
In the House,
advised the federal government to get out of the Union.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Look up Agenda 21. You need to Google that. And if you don't know what that is, you'd probably fall right out of your chair with the scope and the depth and exactly what it is in the four cities or towns in New Hampshire that are loaded with this stuff, where they have programs to radically change the whole environment in the United States, political, social, religious, psychological, and literally pushing people off their land all over the place. Horrendous damage out in California. In March, the Secretary of the Interior will decide whether or not he's going to blow up 4 of those dams in Klamath Falls. They're going to cut off thousands of people, farmers, from their water. They claim the issue was that there was pollution because of the dams. The farmers involved in independent studies at considerable cost. It showed that any water for runoff from their land is crystal clear, but if they decide to blow those, it's going to totally destroy those people's lives. We have the same thing going on all over the world. Australia is the same thing right now too. They're in the same mess. So you need to look that up so that you come in here, because we're going to do a program on that. We're going to push that so people really know what that organization is. Because I'm sure we have some of that in town in New Boston, but we have to investigate. So now that we have a property tax association, why wouldn't a tax association, why wouldn't we have one that protects property rights? When we look into it to see if we have some of that business going on. I'm sure that we do, because just about every town, every city does. Anybody involved in planning in the country, they go through education with exactly the same types of literature and education. So once they come in at this level, they're doing the same type of thing. It's very, very much hidden. It's very obscure. It's very nebulous. So I'll stop talking, and Keith, you're up to bat.
Okay. I'm a little nervous, so please bear with me a little bit. And it also flags the bills that seem to be, the most negative bills. And this is done, through the years, the last 8 years, 6 years or so for the system. So you can log in and get alerts about what's happening in the State House. A simple bill about how to name a bridge, you know, the bills that are, they really have no impact on liberty. They just kind of get kind of ignored by the system. It's really just the ones that have a positive or a negative impact. So that's the bill review system. We also try to get people out to testify when those bad bills or good bills are happening. We try to get people out there to, you know, give the liberty perspective on passing legislation. We have something called the gold standard, which is a piece of paper. It's this colored paper. Something to show. If anyone wants to see any of this afterwards, I can show you on my laptop. It's this colored paper. It's a gold sheet of paper that gets handed out just about every session of the State House, and that's prepared. People take hours to prepare the gold standard, you know, to try to get it out in time. It's kind of like the rush that they have to get a newspaper to print. You know, there's a lot of commotion going on, and then it comes out. But that's basically, it's a cheat sheet or a scorecard about what legislation the reps are going to be voting on that day. And it's the NHOA's best effort at trying to promote liberty for each of the bills, whether to vote yay or nay, ITL, all to pass. So that's the gold standard. Once a year, all the reps are rated. The roll call votes are the votes that we can see who voted individually. So the roll call votes are compiled, and the best ones, the ones with the largest impact are assembled, and the reps are given a score, and that's called the liberty rating. So you can actually look and see, you know, what your rep score is, whether they're an A or an F, or constitutional threat is someone who basically votes against the Constitution every time. So let's see, what else am I forgetting? It's basically a discussion of a promotion of liberty. What is liberty? Just a few thoughts about what liberty is from our perspective. So if you understand what a right is, there are some rights that are positive rights, they're called, and there are some rights that are negative rights. A positive right is a right to things that are from outside yourself. So if you're on a desert island, do you have a right to health care or a right to food, right? If you're the only person on the island, if it's a right, then there's no one there to provide it for you. So positive rights require labor from someone else to get this. A negative right is something that comes from within you. So that's the right to speech, the right to conscience, the right to your faith. That's what the Bill of Rights has, you know, the rights in the Bill of Rights are negative rights. So liberty promotes negative rights. The positive rights are best done in a voluntary manner. So that's where charity comes into play. Charity is a voluntary action. And that's not forcing other people to do it, but to encourage them to help their neighbor out in a voluntary fashion. So that's just a discussion of liberty. I was very nervous, so thanks for letting me practice on you guys. And any questions, I'll talk to you after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those scores that they give to the reps, do the newspapers publish those? The newspapers?
It does get a little bit of press, or maybe a letter to the editor, but it's not really in the newspaper.
That's too bad because
Yeah.
I think
And this isn't a science, right? This is our best effort.
right.
You know, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that they use their best effort to try to parse, you know, the language of the bill and promote liberty. I think in the aggregate, we're promoting liberty, and every once in a while, you know, there might be might be a little conflict about, you know,
Right.
the exact implementation.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure you can answer. Do you wait until the bill comes out of committee, or do you start reading them as soon as they're submitted?
A lot of times there's amendments that get added to it. Our system, we're working on building a better system that will link amendments to bills so that you can track. Because sometimes an amendment can come out and completely change the language of the bill. So
So you tend to wait until after
we
these?
tend to wait till, yeah. So, Any other questions?
How is the gold standard received by the rep group? I mean, how do you distribute it to them? And what do people think of it? I mean, if the reps just throw it away, or?
We've had turnout, so the gold standard gets passed out by volunteers that show up at the State House when the reps are going in to vote. I've done it myself. I wish I could do it more, but I have a full-time job, so I can't get there. I wish the House would meet after 6 on weekdays and on the weekends.
If I can help you out on that, I always pick one up when I'm ready to go into session, along with a couple others, because they do give you some ideas as to what the bills are, as far as liberty, as far as the Constitution, as far as the platform of the Republican Party. So there's people that handing those various things out, along with other pamphlets all the time. And the gold standard is very good. And by the way, I got a name with you last year. Thank you.
Yeah, in my experience of going out and handing them out, even people that we wouldn't think of as being interested in liberty, maybe on the other side of the fence, want them. So I was amazed to see, here's 400 people going into a room, and we better have 400 copies, because they're all going to want one, or close to that number. So it's a very heartening experience. If you'd like to go and do it sometime, I'm sure NHLA can hook you up.
Right, it's all volunteers. I mean, it's a lot of effort to keep up with what's happening at the State House. We endorse 130 reps. This is another part of the process. There's a survey that goes out. It's carefully crafted, maybe 20 questions, and there's some tricky questions in there too. Like it tries to make sure that the rep is really thinking about it, the candidate. So the candidate gets the survey based on their score and the response. The NHLA will provide a donation or a contribution towards their campaign. And so out of 130 reps that we endorse, I think about 80% got elected. A huge percentage got elected. So this is a really good, really great election cycle for Liberty. So we're trying to keep that going. The following year, we have an election cycle coming up, so we're trying to do what we can.
Keith, is the intention when you're endorsing representatives to take into consideration if they're incumbent, how they performed on the scorecard for that term? And,
right.
I understand what the problem is that if you don't do that, then they can gain it by just getting back the survey.
Right, if they understand that.
Giving you the right answers. But on the other hand, if you do, then it allows challengers to gain it, while the incumbents are actually doing it.
Right, it's a tricky one. We have a political director. It was Joel Winters, and he was a sharp guy. He looked at everything from different angles. And now Anthony Pugh is our political director. So there's actually kind of like a subcommittee that I'm not a part of. I'm the membership director. I'm less detail oriented. You have to be very detail oriented to analyze all the numbers. So, but yeah, I recall that being part of the process from the last survey that went out. So
you don't get somebody who's really awful saying, oh, well, fill up the survey. Okay.
Right. There's a board meeting this Saturday in the back of Murphy's Tap Room. It's open to anybody if you'd like to come, because we're always open to ideas and volunteers. So I'll end it there. I'll just pass out some of these, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
That'd be great. Feel free to come and practice anytime. We want you and all your pals here all the time on different issues, or if you have something you think is a real important issue, it's all about education. And that's the problem we have in the country today, is the lack of education. The one-eyed monster has done a lot of damage in 40 years, so even the damage to me.
Website, please.
Next we'll have Lorie Sanborn, so the floor is yours. Go on down.
Good evening. My name is Lorie Sanborn. I'm a state representative. I live in Hampshire, and I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself to you tonight. I know a lot of you already, but I want to just give you a little bit more information about what we're doing at the State House. And I want to thank Keith for all of their efforts in the Liberty Association. It really is important, the work that you do. We do take those gold sheets every House session day. We look at them and we take their advice. On a given day, we could be looking at 50 or more bills. And we try to review them and know everything is my first term, and when I was first elected, I looked around to see if there was a business caucus, and there wasn't one. So in January of last year, I created one. It's called the New Hampshire House Business Coalition. And what it is a group of legislators who are really interested in promoting jobs in the economy and doing it by promoting good, responsible businesses in our state. And what we do is we look at every bill as it passes through the House, and there's about 1,000 a year, and we look at the business impact of that bill. Is it going to increase regulations on companies? Is it going to do that without really benefiting the population? Is it going to increase costs? Is it going to be more complicated? Is it going to eliminate competition? So we look at all these types of things. Is it going to make it harder for them to create jobs in our state? And we do a green sheet. So where they have a gold sheet, our sheet is green, and Bart's been a big part of this. And we don't comment on every single bill, because that would be too much, and not every single bill has a business impact. But every one that does, we comment on, and we make a recommendation. So if it's good for business, we make sure we get out there and promote it. We make sure we're at the committee hearings, we're making sure we're making op-eds about it, and we really are pushing, and we've done some good work. In the last year, in 2011, we passed over 40 pro-business bills. And some of them improve the tax environment by making it more fair. Some of them get in the weeds a little bit on tax code and things like that. And then we also rolled back regulations and made it easier for businesses. And hopefully you've noticed that the unemployment rate in New Hampshire has gone down. Our businesses have actually created jobs. And part of that is the culture in which they operate. And we believe that the New Hampshire business culture is getting better. I'm a New Hampshire native, born and raised in Nashua, and I wasn't politically active until about 5 years ago. And I started to notice that the culture was changing in New Hampshire. I own a small business in Concord. It's a restaurant, 1 mile from the State House, and which is why I can also be in the legislature, because I work at my business at night and I go to the State House during the day. And I noticed about 5 years ago, the culture in New Hampshire was really changing. Every time I turned around, there's a new fee. Every time I turned around, there's another agency auditing me. And it started to get expensive, and it started to not feel like New Hampshire. And I have to be honest, I took a moment there and said, do I need to leave New Hampshire, the state that I love, to find the right environment for me? And in the end, I decided no. This is my state, and I'm going to take it back, and we're going to do the right thing here, which is why I decided to run for office. And I started to pay attention to what my current representative was doing. And I looked up their Liberty rating, and they were a constitutional threat. And that's what helped make my decision to run. So I'm thrilled to be in the legislature under Bill O'Brien's leadership. It's been a wonderful experience. We have done so many great things. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and what we do is look at all the different revenues that come into the state. And we try to do a really good job of estimating what those revenues will be. Which is a little bit different. In the past, I guess they would make up their budget based on how much they wanted to spend, and then make sure we thought we had enough revenues coming in. Well, we did it differently, and we actually really looked at what was realistic, what did we expect to come in, and then we decided how much we could spend. And so far, so good. The Ways and Means Committee made estimates for this budget cycle, and we've been really on target. So that's good. We wanted to make sure more than anything that they were realistic. I will tell you though, I was just looking at my phone because I just got an email. In January, we were actually above plan. So that means we're seeing some great economic signs in our state. And most of the better revenues we're seeing come in are coming from our business community. So that's a good thing. That means they're out there, we're doing the right thing, we're making the right moves. So hopefully some of these laws we passed have really done good things for them. One of the tax decreases that we did was on the cigarettes. The cigarette tax we brought down, and we've been curious to see what would happen with that. The economists have said that it would be probably net neutral, so even though we lower the tax rate, it would actually even out to be not an impact on the budget. And actually we've turned the corner, so just in January we've turned the corner, and now we're actually bringing in more revenue because we reduced the taxes on this product. And the benefit of doing things like tax reductions is it brings more people to our state. So we get greater cross-border sales from Maine and Massachusetts, who not only come to buy cigarettes, they come and buy our lottery tickets. They buy gas. They go out to eat. They buy liquor. And that's all state revenue. And And so we're really thrilled about the progress we're making there, and we're going to stay the course, and we're going to continue to be the watchdog for you at the State House to make sure we're not increasing the size of government, we're not imposing excessive regulations and imposing on your freedoms, and we're always available to listen and learn from you as well. So I'm willing to answer any questions if you have any. Great, that was easy.
What's the name of the restaurant?
The Draft.
The Draft.
Like to see you all there, 67 South Main Street.
It's a great job, we need watchdogs like that. Little fight, they have some fight now, right? It keeps things underneath the microscope, electron microscope of the Democrats, right? Okay, so I think Andy Sanborn is going to be up next, and Andy's
Would you like to go first?
You want to get up first, Bill?
I'm glad to introduce Andy.
Sure.
Absolutely. You know, this is Lorie's first term, and I think you can just see why, even though she's in her first term, I pointed to Ways and Means. Usually you have to be here like 5 or 6 terms now, but Lorie came in with such outstanding credentials and such enthusiasm and drive that she was appointed to the Ways and Means Committee right at the beginning. And since then, like anyone who's competent, we keep on turning to her for more and more. And so she's in majority office leadership now, assistant majority leader. This is just extraordinary. But it really does indicate the strength of the representatives that you sent to us this past election. And so, Lorie, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Lorie did mention that revenue figures have come in for January, and we're really enthused. Business taxes are $14 million above plan. The cigarette tax, the tobacco tax, is $1 million above plan. Now, you know, Governor Lynch stood up during his State of the State address and said, it's nonsensical. You reduce a tax, you have less money. We know that that isn't the case. You reduce a tax and there's more economic activity. And that is what is happening here. Now, we can always depend on Massachusetts, of course, to help us out when it comes to cross-border sales. So Governor Patrick has put forward a budget that has a 50-cent per pack, $5 per carton tax increase. So this is going to, these figures are going to look better. But you know, as I've got up and talked to you before, we talk millions and billions and so forth. It's sometimes hard to see exactly what is happening here. Let me tell you what's happening. Governor Lynch came forward with a budget proposal that had revenue estimates that we determined, Lorie and her committee determined, and the House adopted their determination, were about 12% too high. And so we put in realistic revenue estimates. And we see that we're on track at this point. If we had gone with Governor Lynch's revenue estimates, we would be, based upon some taxes that are still going to come in, we would be $50 million in the hole, 1/4 of the way through this 2-year budget. We would be facing a $200 million deficit looming at the end of this budgetary cycle. Instead, based upon the revenues that have come in the first 6 months, we are going to be facing probably a $50 million surplus. That is the type of fiscal responsibility that we promised the people of New Hampshire that we would bring to New Hampshire. And I think it's beginning to play out here. We're not going to have the same pressures as we did in the past to, at the end of this session, it always happens in the second half of the session, to sort of scramble and come up with an LLC tax, or come up with a campground tax, or go find a piece of another road that we could sell from the highway department to the transportation department to the turnpike authority. We're back to what New Hampshire was in the past, which is a responsible state that lives within its means. And as a result of that, again, as Representative Sanborn mentioned, business activity is picking up in New Hampshire and jobs are picking up in New Hampshire. Right now in New Hampshire, we have more people employed than any time in our state history. And that is as a result of the unemployment rate going down, Hampshire, it's been growing. Certainly, as we talked about before, there's been a reduction in public employment jobs, but those have been totally absorbed, and we're 8,000 jobs ahead of where we were when you gave us the permission to take over the legislature and to start to legislate. And we've had a great first half, and we've done a lot of different things that I think are real positive in the end. And the majority office, Republican office, came out with an agenda, and they had a press conference yesterday, and they talked about what we're going to be doing, and they came up with 4 different categories of continued efforts we're going to make in the Hampshire House for the second half of this term. We're going to be finishing up with business probably May or June. They talked about the economy and job creation. And let me tell you just some specific examples of what we're going to be doing under each one of these headings. And economy and job creation, we're going to eliminate the business enterprise tax for smaller businesses. We're going to increase the threshold before it applies. That's the type of thing we need to do. Business enterprise tax is a payroll tax, and it's foolish if we have an opportunity to continue to tax small businesses because they hire somebody, increase their tax. We're going to look to eliminate that. Also, under the heading of economy and job creation, just as an example, there's many different efforts that we're working on. We're working on legislation and moving it forward that would allow, if someone's involved in a civil lawsuit, allow them to go to the other side and say, you know what, you might have a case here, how about if I give you this amount of money, and we'll settle the case right now. And if they refuse and they lose the case, or they don't get that kind of money, then they have to pay the other side's legal fees. So this is a way of reducing litigation and promoting settlement, and that is pro-jobs, that's pro-business. Another one of the 4 categories is reforming state government. And, you know, again, a lot of these things are sort of esoteric, but they're highly necessary. We have a bill moving forward that would say if the government privately contracts to provide any functions that are being provided by state employees now, they can't claim that that's an unfair labor practice. They can't go and force government, force the taxpayers to continue to with inefficient state operations. Another one we're looking at is the Chancellor's Office that runs all the 4 universities. We have, by way of reminder, University of Hampshire in Durham. We have Plymouth State College, or State University, they call themselves now. We have Keene State University, and we have Grant State College, which is a college that is for part-time college students. Laying over all that is something called the Chancellor's Office. And the Chancellor's Office has, I can't remember exactly, but I think it's 20 employees that get paid over $100,000 a year. And they're entirely duplicative of what can be done at the university level. They have a lobbyist. She doesn't like to be called a lobbyist. I notice she's always around the State House. She's always talking about bills and past. So she kind of seems that way. And she's paid with her benefits and her staff, just her benefits, her salary and benefits, almost $200,000 a year. We don't need that. It's $12 million if we eliminate it that we can send back down to the state universities. Again, trying to reform government. We're looking at the Department of Labor. We've talked about the Department of Labor in the past, how there was a bill that, I think it was Senator Luther proposed. It was a great bill that said, before the Department of Labor can go and fine a business for a paper violation, they have to first warn, give a 30 days warning. They said paper violations, postage notice, something like that. And the problem that necessitated that legislation is that the Department of Labor is self-funded. They go out and find businesses. They take fees from businesses, and that's how they keep themselves employed. The incentive was all along. So we have a bill that would require the Department of Labor to be brought back into the general fund. And they'll compete with all the other agencies on whether or not their employment should go up or down or whatever, not go out and abuse businesses. Again, examples of how we're trying to reform state government. We days back, is promoting a bill that I think is a great bill. What it allows is businesses to take a credit against the business profits tax, and to the extent that they give money to students to go, and this is secondary students, high school students, to go and use that as a voucher, to go to get a private education somewhere else. So it provides kids and their families, working class kids, middle class kids, it will provide them an opportunity to do what I think a lot of us would like to do, is to seek alternatives to public school education. And that's good for public school education because it provides competition. The reason we give it credit is it avoids some of the constitutional problems of taking state money, taxpayer money, and giving it to a family who might send their child to a religious school. This is structured that it's just a credit. The private business gives it to them. If they want to take it to a religious school, they can do that, and works past the constitutional problem. We also have a bill moving forward that would require the Department of Education, the State Department of Education, before it promulgates any further rules, to get legislative permission first. There's this shadow government out there of bureaucrats who are coming out with rules all the time. And you elect representatives, you elect senators, who you ask, make the laws for me, or undo, hopefully, some of the laws for me. And this is a way of making sure that it's happening where we all expect it to be happening. We have a bill under promoting educational excellence, House Bill 1403, that would allow parents to withdraw their children from any school that is teaching or has adopted the International Baccalaureate degree. And that's happening. So it allows parents, once again, just as House Bill 574, which allows parents to take their children out of courses that have objectionable material, allows parents to exercise their parental rights and the love they have for the children, making sure that the children aren't unnecessarily exposed to beliefs and philosophies that they are opposed to. So these are the sort of things that we're working on. We've had some great achievements, and we're really enthused about the remaining part of this legislative session. We're enthused that we do even part of this, that we can come back to the voters and say, yeah, not only have we achieved electoral triumphs here, legislative triumphs here, but we need another 4 years, and we have a right to ask you, we have for another, 2 years, to go back out there and finish the job. So again, unless there's some questions, I'd like to, if I could, introduce a great friend of mine, which is Senator Andy Sanborn. As you look across the state legislature, particularly with the 163 new representatives we had come in, and was it 12 new senators that came in?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
12 new senators came in, and as you look across all those, you may think, and there's great movement conservative, great liberty-oriented people, you might think it's really difficult to identify who among them are the real stars, but then you would know Andy Sanborn, because Andy truly has been a star up there. He's been very active. It amazes me the energy he has in identifying areas of improvement in our government. He's taken on particularly the area of governmental efficiency, breaking down the silos among the various agencies, making government more accessible to people. Certainly in terms of fiscal responsibility and liberty-oriented legislation, he not only has been always supportive of them, he's been the thought leader in a lot of these. So, it's a great deal of pleasure actually to see you here this evening, Andy. I didn't know you were going to be here. It's a great deal of pleasure to be able to introduce you to this group, because you make us all look great. Well, thank you.
All right, we just proved the fact that the House is doing all the hard work and we're just the pretty face of the Senate. Again, my name is Andy Sanborn, and you obviously just met not only my better half, but 3 of the most wonderful people I look up to in Concord. Some that I really like, one obviously that I love. I don't know how many of you are married, but I'm a man who is, and I make no bones about it, hopelessly in love with his wife.
She's everything in the world to me, and she inspires me every day in the leadership she's gotten from Speaker O'Brien and the things they've been able to accomplish in the House. You guys should be so thankful for it. So before I talk about my efficiency thing, which I was so grateful that Pat let me come to talk about, I want to talk a little bit about my background, who I am, what I've been doing, what I'm looking for in the future, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the Senate's doing to try and augment all the great things that's happening in the House. Just like my girl, I'm a 4th generation New Hampshire native. I'm born and raised in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Big Irishman, like all Irishmen should be. My family came over in the boat in 1860 during the Great Potato Famine. My grandfather was a wonderful man. He taught me so much about what it means to live the traditional New Hampshire Yankee way of life. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 5th grade, started working in wood shops to feed his families, and lost most of his fingers. During the middle of the Depression, he stood in line with 250 people trying to apply for a job so he could help feed his family. And he got a job, and he was so thankful to be able to carry coal down the street in buckets. 45 years later, my grandfather owned a little company in White River Junction, Vermont, just over the border in Lebanon. It taught me so much about what the American dream really means. I'm proud that I'm a blue-collar guy with scabs on his knees and dirt under his fingernails. It means so much to me to really embrace that traditional New Hampshire values that are so important to us. And as Lorie had said, we've been very, very fortunate. Both 4th generations. My background's actually in banking and finance. I don't think there's anyone here old enough to remember Indian Head Bank. Right? Like I said, I don't think any of you are old enough to remember Indian Head Bank.
Has it gone out?
I went to New England College at Henniker. I was an athlete, loved skiing, got done college, and really didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. And someone said, you know, you should go work in the bank and lend people money because you'll see every industry. And I just thought anywhere I could be close to money would be pretty cool because I was a starving college kid. So when I got to the bank, and I spent 22 years at Indian Head Bank lending money. And to me, it was back in those, when again, we talk about those traditional values, that it was an institution that believed in the community. It believed in helping companies grow and expand. But most importantly, my first day on the job, this little wisp of a girl walked by. And it was love at first sight. And I swore to God right that day that I would marry her. Now, it took a year before she'd speak to me. But 25 years being together, 21 years being married, she inspires me every day. And we work like every entrepreneur. I believe in work. I believe in that American dream. I understand all the sacrifices you have to make. And I've been very fortunate that I've had some great successes and we've had challenges. But it's that ability to get up back off the ground and actually go at it again, just like our economy is doing today. That is the American dream. And I'm so proud of it. But like Lorie said, it's hard for me to talk about some of this stuff because she's already taken my whole stump speech for crying out loud. You know, about 5 years ago, we woke up and said, what the heck's happened? We're working so hard. We're not making any money. We're struggling every day, and we have this government that comes in and makes demand after demand after demand on us. We're working for the man. It's like 1984. So like any good Irishman, after I got done drinking and trying to kill a bunch of them, I remember what my grandfather used to say to me. And I'm sure the same things he said to you, right? Don't complain if you're not willing to take your turn. And don't take your turn if you don't have a solution. So, with the encouragement of a number of people, I decided to run for office. Because I figured if a guy like me could run for office, anyone could run for office. Now this is in 2007. With a lot of great encouragement from people, I got the traditional slap on the butt, go get him Tiger, and ran out the door with my wife and thought we were going to change the world. Now unfortunately, there was a train coming. And no one told me that I wasn't on it, I was in front of it. So who was an Obama guy anyway? I'm not even sure who it was. So, you know, we lost office in 2008, but it taught us a lot about connecting with people and having a good message. And the reality is, as someone who would never run for office in his life, who is proud to be a curmudgeon, and when I grow old, I want to be a curmudgeon, I embrace it. The reality is, I lost the state Senate race by, on average, about 25 votes per town. But it taught me, or reinforced to me, that premise of, you know, if you have an idea, stay at it. Now, some of you might remember something the speaker had said, something called the LLC income tax. I don't know if any of you remember that or not. I happen to be standing over in the State House at 11:30 at night, and my background's in finance and economics. Go back to my job. After 18 years at Indian Head Bank, I worked through both recessions. I was here when all the banks collapsed, and had a very difficult time when all these people came in from outside into our state and were making decisions that didn't match up with our core values. So at that point, I was working for Bank of New Hampshire, which was then bought by Bank of Ireland. Mention I'm Irish, right? You know, the Irish love the Irish. But I went to them and said, hey, look, I can't do this. I can't stand here while you're destroying everything I believe in. This is my home. So they convinced me to go run a $300 million international leasing company to try and turn it around. It was in Chicago. But because I love my girl, and I make no bones about that, all right, guys, I'm a sap. It just is what it is. I made him fly me to Chicago Mondays and home on Fridays so I could turn around this company. And then we came back and we started some companies because I'm an entrepreneur, just like my granddad. But when I got mad at our government, and I was walking around the State House at 11:30 at night when, you know, the other side of the aisle, like, we tend to try and be as polite as we can, right? Those guys over there, the tax and spenders. I'm not pointing at the speaker, by the way, because he's on my side, the right side. You know, they walked out of the room and said, hey, look, we're going to balance the budget. We just found $78 million because we're going to close a loophole and institute a 13.5% tax on small business owners. And you're looking at one. So I actually started what was called StopTheLLCTax.com. I pulled together 3,500 small business owners and 27 business advocacy groups, and like a good Irishman, yelled like hell, because I wanted my state back. And for the first time in our state's history, I was able to force a sitting governor to repeal a law he had just passed. And that was an amazing win for the people of this state. So with some encouragement and some friends, I ran for office again in 2010. You know, as conservatives, we had a little wind at our back. You know, as Mr. Hurst would always say, I have a draft going on. Because I have a restaurant called The Draft, so he always has a draft job. So amazingly, because my wife was there the whole way for me in 2008, and on the last day signing up, like we said, we live in Henniker. I don't know if any of you guys know Henniker or not. I think we're the only two Republicans that live there. So she came home and said, you know, there's no one running for the House. And in case you haven't noticed, she's a lot smarter than me. She said, I think I'm going to run. And I encouraged her to do it, and she did. And she's the first Republican to ever get elected in that town. It's an amazing job. So as a result of that, this is the second time, right? This is the second time in history that we have a husband and wife in the legislature who is in the Senate and the House. I mean, the House has a lot of husband and wives, mostly because wives want to keep track of their husbands. but in the Senate, it's the second time it's ever happened, and I'm proud. I'm just so proud of everything she's done and everything the Speaker's done. They've truly done an amazing thing. So let's talk a little bit about where we are today, and then we'll talk a little bit about this efficiency thing, and then I'll get out of your hair. Someone said that the Speaker's buying beers. Okay, maybe the Speaker's buying beers.
Who brought it to me?
As you know, about every 10 years, or literally every 10 years, the Constitution requires that we redraw all the maps. We have about 1.3 million people in our state. And both for the House, we believe in this concept of one person, one vote. We have 24 senators in our state. So every 10 years, we redraw the maps. Now, there's an upside and a downside with this last wave election that we had, where we have 19 Republican senators. The upside is, we got 19. You know, we can vote about anything we want. The downside is, at some level, there's a requirement that now you have to try and keep 19 people happy when you're redrawing all these new maps. And there were some senators who felt, if we're going to redraw the map, I'm comfortable with my district, I know my constituents, you're not changing anything. Then there are other senators who, like our senator from the way up north, John Gallus is his name, he had, on 3 sides of him, there's a border. So if you're going to redraw the map, it's very difficult to make any movement out of it. So the Senate came to me in February and said, hey look, the district you represent, I represent 19 towns. I start at the racetrack up in Loudon, come all the way around Concord, and all the way down to Nelson and Harrisville, bordering New Boston. They said, look, if you've got the 3rd biggest district in the state, and if you'd be willing to let us do a little poaching, I don't know if any hunters in this room, not always a bad word. If you let us do a little poaching, let's move your district around a little bit, we can ensure that we can rewrite the map to make sure we have a Republican majority for the next 10 years. And I said yes, because I believe in team. I believe we're one people. So we fast forward about 9 months, and I see a map. Did I mention I'm a first-term senator and I'm a little naive? So in order to make better for all of us, my wife and I made a conscious decision to let them cut up our district, in all honesty. For us, part of that conversation was based upon the fact that we truly believe in family, just like we believe in friendship. And even though I've been in Henniker for 30 years, like I mentioned, 4th generation native, and I've owned a house there for 23 years. Lorie's from Nashua. We won't hold that against her. Big city girl to me. I mean, she was a big city girl. You know, her father's having some health issues. Because we believe in family, she wants to be a little closer to him. So we made the decision with the redistricting of the map and how things change around, and the fact that I made a commitment to our party. And the reality is, every time you guys support us as candidates, and I'm expecting Mr. Hurst to cut me a check for $2,000 for my re-election campaign, they know he's got it. That's making a big sacrifice. It really is. But at the same token, my wife and I have decided to make a sacrifice for our party and allow them to really change the maps. But for us, it also gives us an opportunity to kind of reassess where our future is. She wants to be closer to her family, and I completely support that. So we made the decision that we would move. I also made the decision, and I think she has as well, that we'd like to stay in this thing for a little while, 2-4 more years. Because I'm going to tell you what I'm trying to get done over on this side in a second. So we made a decision, we'd like to have the opportunity to continue to represent the people of New Hampshire. I'm not the best at it, but I listen, and as the speaker will say, I'm probably the most fun of all the senators that we have. At least I'm the biggest and the boldest and the most conservative, and that counts for something. So we have made a decision that since her family's in North Nashua, and your senator, Ray White, I'm not sure if many of you know him or not, Ray's my friend, I love that guy, I will take a bullet for him, and I don't mean like one in the arm, I mean like square in the chest. He means a lot to me. And we decided, since he's not running, and we have an opportunity to move close to my in-laws, which is an amazing thing for a husband to say, that we're going to move to Bedford. And with the redrawing of the map, because everything's moved around, there are actually still towns in District Number 9 that I represent today, down in the southern tier. So I'm officially telling you, I haven't made a public statement yet, and I won't till next week probably, that we're planning on moving to Bedford, and I'd like to run for office, and at some point I'll call you up and ask you for your consideration to allow me to represent you as your senator. But I don't want anyone to surprise you with this, so I wanted to tell you myself. So you ask yourself, well, why the big fat guy up front? What am I doing to justify your vote? As the speaker says, my background's in finance and economics. I'm a numbers guy. I find a level of comfort with them. And in fighting the LLC income tax, it gave me the time and the ability to sit back as a guy that ran a relatively large company and say, well, it's pretty easy for all of us to say, right? What's wrong? There's something wrong with government. It goes on beyond, you know, in addition to the social problems, the mechanical problems. It's not respecting us as people anymore. It's so difficult to get into. It's so difficult to communicate with. It's so difficult to retract from at some level of service. Because last time I checked, I was paying in. And I have some expectation of some response back from them. And all I ever got back from them was audits, taxes, fees, fines, and penalties. Now for me, we have to remember, we have 60, I say 37, they say 60 different agencies in government. You have a government for labor, which the Speaker talks about. There's an agency for environmental services. There's an agency for health and human services. There's an agency for the arts. And as the Speaker says, they're all essentially building these little pyramid rooms. We call them silos. They don't let you in, they don't let anybody out. I look at that and the interaction, so with all of these, so we have to kind of make a decision where our specialty is. I make no bones about it. My specialty is in business. So I've really been focusing, just as my wife has when she mentions her House Business Coalition, I've really been focusing on the 11 agencies that interact with business. That as a business owner, who do I have to call up and interact with? And try to understand why not one of them know who I am. Every single one of them have a different name for me. Everyone has a different number for me. They all have different expectations from me. And how are we going to attract businesses and jobs into this state when they don't know what they're doing and they can't communicate? I make no bones about it. I want everyone to have a job. And I'm as pro-job as a man can be. But you can't be pro-job if you're not pro-business. I spent 18 months looking around America. We used to be, again, none of you are old enough to remember. I understand, none of you are old enough to remember. But back in the 80s, we had more jobs than we had people. Okay, Mr. Hurst may be old enough to remember that. There were people offering 100% pay bonuses just to walk across the street. We had economic opportunities for every single person that wanted them. We've lost that in our state, and I know right now it's a difficult time. But it still exists in some places. If you look at Delaware, Virginia, South Carolina, Texas, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, those states, as a result of electing some great people like the Speaker to help lead the issues we have, are really doing a lot of things to reclaim their position as a place that businesses want to be and want to go to. Everyone remember Boeing and the union issue they have going on right now? Where do they want to go? China. South Carolina, right? I never heard him say I want to go to New Hampshire. But as a senator, I want him to come to New Hampshire. I want any business in America, whether or not it's existing today or starting up and looking for a place to be, when they say, I want to organize my business, I want them to say New Hampshire. The challenge is today we can't do that because we stink. You call up the Secretary of State's office and say, I want to, does anyone here own their own business? Have you ever, when's the last time you filed for a business and called up the Secretary of State and say, hey, look, I want to file for a business? You have to pull something offline, you have to mail it in, they fight with you about what the name of your business is. It's a real unfriendly service. And we see some people shaking their heads, right? It's like, oh my God, how are they doing this? I mean, throughout this process, I said, you know, I'm a car guy. You know, some people like to play golf, I like vintage cars. I admit it. I restore vintage race cars. And I said, you know, for the test, I want to start a car dealership. Because I want to prove to myself how difficult it is to do this. I just want to get like a dealer license. I want that cute, cool plate on the back. Of course, I couldn't do anything online. I had to drive over to the DMV. I had to stand in line for 40 minutes where people get their licenses from Afghanistan or wherever they were from. I walk up to the counter, I tell them I want to start a business in a car dealership. They give me 4 pieces of paper that have been mimeographed so many times, I can't read them. 50, right? I can't read them. And when I ask my wife to decipher them for me, every piece of paper is asking the exact same question. And the name on the masthead was a sweet old lady who was in charge of that division about 19 years ago. That isn't the perspective of New Hampshire. I want to show America. So I took the time and said, all right, if I could be king for the day, even better than that, if I could be speaker for the day, how would I change this? I want to take all 11 of those agencies And if no one will let me cram them into one room in one agency, intellectually, I believe we can do that. Last time I knew that guy, what's his name? That's right, Al Gore. The guy made the internet.
Yeah.
Right? It's a funny thing, that internet. I want to take the internet technologically and allow any of us, and again, my focus is on jobs and business. It's where we start because there's less of us. And let anyone, anywhere in America, I'm a twin. I think there's two of us. I'm a twin who lives in Southern California. If he's going to start a business, I want him to be able to sit in his bedroom in La Jolla, California, and get online and start a business in New Hampshire. He can do it with Delaware. He needs to be able to do it. We need to find a way that we can intersect and interact with government entirely online. Just in these 10 agencies, we figure we have 10,000 forms. 10,000. The reality is we don't even know how many we have because we've never even asked the question. But we're asking the question right now. With the support of the Speaker in the Senate, we have this commission. And we're kind of poking around a little bit and completely redefining what we're doing. And to give the governor credit, because I don't give him a lot, because we don't think the same. I mean, obviously the governor and I are very different. I'm tall, and I answer questions when asked. But it's a whole nother story. But I have to give the governor credit that he put about $3 million into creating what we call the business one-stop. Which essentially, I'm trying to create a way that every business, and someday, not long from now, every single person will be able to enter a single door and interact entirely with government with never leaving your seat. That every single form, every interaction from the creation, education, managing, monitoring, reporting, and even the bad side, the enforcement side, everything you do in government you can do from your desk. Now that's the pitch I made to the governor. Because what's not great about being able to get in and enter government and transact with it? And he bought off, and we're walking down that road, and I'm very excited for it. All right, let's talk about this part I didn't talk to the governor about. For me, as a technology guy, our ability to take every single form and let you fill it out online without having to pull it off and copy it, put a stamp and send it in, is going to make an amazing opportunity for us. And this opportunity is driven on one real important issue. Again, credit to the Speaker. I mean, he knows I'm a huge fan. These guys over in the House gave to the Senate, because remember, they do all the work, we sit back and look good. A budget that was $800 million less than the last one. For the first time since World War II, we're actually spending less money, which is your tax dollars. But the fear that the Speaker and I have, as it always is creep. How long will we be able to keep the spending down? Cutting, as difficult as it is, it doesn't cure our problem. Kicks the can down the road. But in order for us to truly fix it, we need to reform how it happens. We need to make sure that not only did we cut, but we have made the process so much more efficient and so different that they can never come back and spend the money again. So let's get back to my little program here. If I can take every form that we use that's online and allow you to fill it out electronically and allow you to send it in, the most important part is we will be the first state in America that lets you date stamp something. Because when you hit enter on your computer, electronically, now we can stamp it. I sent this form in today at 5 o'clock, and it ended up on the desk of that clerk. And when they sign the form off or move the form, they date stamp it. So for the first time ever, the state of New Hampshire is going to know, is that person working hard?
That's right.
Because we have to be honest. You know, we all talk about how lazy government is, and they're not all lazy. I mean, there are some good employees. But we have no idea if they're doing their job because we've never created a mechanical process to say, how many of this task are you doing a day? And how many of this task should we be doing a day? My grandfather carried coal down the street in buckets, right? 16 houses, that was the gig, every day. You had some sort of a matrix that you knew what the job was and how many you had to do today. And in government, we don't have that. So we're going to establish a performance matrix for how we as people interact with our government. From that, and this is the exciting part, once we can essentially electronically manage all the processes in government, we can consolidate them intellectually and physically. So what my goal from this program is, by next year, with the support of the House, please, 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 is I'm going to consolidate the front end and back end operating functions of our government, and I'm going to privatize them. And I'm going to cut about 1,000 jobs and save us about $300 million. Be the largest single cut we've ever made to a single agency. Think about that. We need jobs, and we need private sector jobs. So my goal is to put out an RFP, and I don't care if they build it in Berlin, because ladies and gentlemen, they need jobs in Berlin, or if they put it in Laconia, or if they put it in New Boston. Every major company in the world today has call centers. Now don't get me wrong, I'm so tired of picking up that phone and talking to that guy from American Express, and I can't understand the damn word he's saying. Because remember, I'm Irish, we're just not that smart. So in New Hampshire, with New Hampshire people, we can make our government smaller and more efficient and reset the bar so it never grows big again. Today in our state, we go back to those 11 agencies. Our two biggest agencies, which is our IRS, remember the LLC income tax, coming home to roost. Our agency doesn't even take charge cards. Department of Labor that the Speaker talks about doesn't even accept charge cards. Our court system today accepts money in 5 different places, but until this year never took a charge card. We talk about how archaic government is, how it runs like the 50s. I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we have plenty of room to save money. And with this program, if I'm lucky enough to put it in, we can revolutionize our state and revolutionize how we do things and set the bar as the place America wants to be. And here's my sales pitch. Shameless plug. But in order to do that, I got to come back. Because I've started a process. I'm very committed to it. We have a lot of issues in our government. And we have really, really great people who are doing all types of things, and I completely support them. And as the Speaker knows, I'm a pretty, as they say up at the State House, I'm a pretty good vote. Because if it's going to cut regulation or save money or restore our traditional New Hampshire values, you can count me in. But for all of us, we all have a goal. Some people want to go up there forever. God bless them. I'm a little bit more bull in a china shop. I want to get in, I want to wreck the place and rebuild it, and then go home. So I will be asking for your support. I truly hope you consider supporting the initiatives that we're doing. Because remember, this is one piece of legislation out of 1,000 that we're working on. And the vast majority of them are really good, and they really deserve your consideration. Again, most of the heavy lifting, I make no bones, we joke about it. The House does most of the heavy lifting. And I'm so thankful for all the support that they've given. But together as a team, if you discount all the ladies, earmuffs, all the crap you see in the paper, we're doing good things. We're fixing our state. We're each taking a little piece of it and truly making it better and something you can truly be proud of. And I'm proud to be part of that package. So with that, I appreciate you letting me come up here and talk for a little while. I'm happy to answer any questions on this concept I'm working on, as well as any other piece of legislation we have that I might know about. But again, remember, I'm from the Senate, so the House will have the honest answer, and I'll just make one up. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Anyone? Sir, Pete.
I just have a comment.
By the way, 6 months ago I was nervous too.
Okay, cool. I can aspire. We got the bellies are.
My feet's good. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. Just so you know, we all have little backstories. We talk about the challenges in education. Back in my day, I was born 6 weeks premature. I never spoke till I was 6 years old. A horrible stuttering problem. I practice every day. I was in speech therapy all the way through high school 5 days a week. So I understand how difficult it can be talking, because you're talking to a guy that never spoke as a child. But you find a level of comfort with it, it will come. What's your question?
I just had a comment. It's difficult to make government operate like a business, because a business, the customer can choose voluntarily to go to another business, right? So there's a market signal with a private business. But with government, it's difficult because the market signals are dampened down. There's only a signal every 2 years. So trying to get government to operate like a business is a really tricky task. I applaud you for looking into it. I don't know, that's just my comment.
Okay, well, here's my answer to that. Because I hear a lot of bureaucrats say that, right? You know, commissioners, they love me over government. You know, because they want to do it the same way they've always done it. I believe government can act like a business, because we are a business. It's a business of providing goods and service, and it's supposed to be support. You know, all of us, again, no one in the room except Mr. Hurst is old enough to remember. You know, government always had this perception that we're here to help. Remember that? Government's here to help those most in need. Unfortunately, today, all government does is fee, fine, penalize, and assess you. Culturally, it's lost that shift. So I believe if we bring it back, if we respect the people, if we respect the companies, that will recognize that those that operate like a business will get them. Because, I'll be right back to you, because we faced an $800 million deficit last year. $800 million. In a state like ours with 1.3 million people, that's a ton of money. But if we could have set up this business one-stop, if I could have been the place that every company looked to that wanted to start their business, if I could have gotten Google to incorporate in New Hampshire, in 2009 they paid $365 million in taxes. Almost half of our deficit with one company. How many of those do we need? And that's the philosophy we need to have.
I guess just the concept was introduce as many market signals as you can. You know, metrics that you're talking about on employees, provide the public a way to give feedback other than just the election year, and that will introduce market signals. It's my opinion. You know, if Walmart could force you to buy its products, it would look like the DMV. You know, right? Because there's no competition. There's no incentive to improve because.
I try and give government the feedback every year. I just tell them I stop paying my taxes.
Yeah, right.
All right,
that doesn't work, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Doesn't that?
But we can do it. I mean, we as legislator, you as people, every day we can begin to hold our government to a higher standard, politely and articulately. But we can introduce some of these processes that are really create the future of what our state is.
Sir, I have a question. I'm thinking
Keep it simple. I'm not that smart.
Okay, I'm thinking out of the box here. You've heard of free tax zones.
Heard of what?
Free tax zones.
Free tax zones? Yes, sir.
Right. Do you think it's ever going to would be possible to set up, we'll call it American job zone? These would be areas in a state where government would be less intrusive. I'm not talking about less safety or anything like that, but they would have an advantage of competing, making widgets with, you can't compete with China one-to-one because they make 60 cents an hour, whatever it is. But you know what I'm saying? Do you understand the concept?
You know, ironically, part of this commission that I'm working on, I pulled some what I believe to be the brightest minds of people in New Hampshire. Because God knows I just proved the fact that I married up, right? One of the people I pulled in on this commission is a gentleman, we've become really close friends. He lives in Hill, New Hampshire. Anyone know where Hill, New Hampshire is?
Up north. Yeah.
Up north? Yeah. We're in New Boston, sir. That's a pretty big jump. Hill, New Hampshire is a little town that in 1953, our state, at the request of Massachusetts, kicked everyone out of their houses and flooded the valley. To me, it's a real significant town. It's always been a tiny little town. I've met this wonderful man. He specializes in efficiencies. making zones. His thing is all about front end and back end data processing, call centers. He's the only employee of his company that lives in New Hampshire. But he has 23,000 employees worldwide. He is Federal Express from Ireland to India. Everything but the trucks and the uniforms. There are so many things we can do. And when I talk to this man who's on every single continent, he is desperately trying to come back to America because the whole fear that we've always had about China and about India and about Pakistan and Taiwan, there is a shift going on. That those countries, God bless them, are seeing some real increases. That we used to be able to get any attorneys in the room. No, the speaker doesn't say anything. You used to be able to get an attorney in India for like $5 an hour. Now they're $75 an hour, which is almost a $600 an hour this one charges. So we're seeing some real differences in wage scales and benefits. And they need to do that in those countries. But now we think about the transfer of energy and time and distance. So here's a guy with 23,000 employees trying to move jobs back to America. So it is coming. It's not that we need to segregate American employees and American widgets. We build a better product. We work harder. We have a better ethic. We need to work with our regulations. We need to work with some taxation. We need to make ourselves more efficient. I'm telling you right now, 5 years from now, you will be amazed at the economic prosperity of the state. It is coming. Any other questions? Ma'am?
I just wondered, would you require a Republican government in order to pass the thing that you're working on?
I'm honest, ma'am. I'm a conservative. I make no bones about it. I would love to have people that think like me. We have it in the House. I would love it in the corner office. I mean, I understand John Lynch gets a huge approval rating, and a large part of it is because everyone says he's a nice man. I try to be nice. And we're Irish, right? We'll fight with anyone, but we'll drink with everybody. What we're missing in our corner office today is we're missing that leadership. We're missing that drive.
Well, that's what I mean. What I'm thinking is that you would get this thing all online, and then he would just veto it. I'm saying,
No.
are you going to need, or can you have enough votes to do it without him or something so that he can't stop it?
You sound like you're local. Are you from West Boston? Because I know I'm in New Boston, and that's not the same accent. I'm sorry?
I said I'm the plant.
It's okay, we love you anyway. I got to give the governor credit. There are some, every once in a while he does something good, and even the speaker will agree. Every once in a while he does something good. And in this case, he's allowed this thing to start. In order to finish it, it will take, because I'm not a good politician, let's be honest. Answer questions when asked, and I actually want to get something done. So as opposed to talking about this for the next 10 years with committees and commissions and do what typical politicians do, I'm actually going to write this as a piece of legislation. If I'm lucky enough to get your support, if I'm lucky enough to win and get back in, this will be a piece of legislation next January that I truly hope the Speaker and his team come and sign off on it. And if they do sign on it, we will force this through legislatively, not through some executive order like you see play around at that top end. And with a Republican governor, I know they will support this. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity.
That was a great job, especially the part about streamlining government with technology.
Yes, sir.
It makes a lot of sense. That's quite a cast too. That's a big number. That's a real big number. So that's great. So good. Bill's done a great job up there. We think about the what they tried to do, stepping into this thing when they did. And oh man, huge deficit and cutting out all the different taxes and all of the, of course, the furor up there with the unions in there. So it's been a real battle that's been carried out very, very effectively by people up there. Just absolutely amazing that say you're going to do something like that and then achieve that is great. Now we got to keep it going. Anybody that knows anybody that's interested in running in this area, want to start thinking about our reps right now and looking ahead. So if anybody, I'll call Peter Kushma and see if he's still interested in getting back in the game. So,
Pat, can I have just a minute to...
Sure.
Yeah,
you voted, so you're
I just want to mention, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Bart Hardwick. I'm represent Hillsborough District 2, Bennington, here in Francistown, Greenfield. And I just wanted to mention that we're going to have House Bill 437 coming up before the House shortly, which would put back traditional marriage in the state of New Hampshire, make marriage between a man and a woman. We were given, as far as I'm concerned, the same-sex marriage, and it just galled me every time I listened while the news was broadcasting primaries, and they were telling me what a liberal state we are because we have same-sex marriage in the state. We had a governor that stood up and said time after time after time, I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. And when that bill came across his desk, he said, well, I believe that marriage belongs between a man and a woman, but I got to sign this. And we ended up with same-sex marriage in the state. House Bill 437 would just simply put marriage back between a man and a woman in the state of New Hampshire. It would create, again, civil unions, so that same-sex couples would have all the rights under law as a married couple. It would continue to recognize all the marriages that have already been done with same-sex couples in the state, and it would not recognize out-of-state same-sex marriages. But this bill will be coming before the House shortly. I'm not sure when. But we are having a rally Tuesday at noontime up on the State House steps. And I'd like to encourage everybody that believes that I do, that marriage belongs between a man and a woman. It served our society well for all these years, and this social experiment that we're in right now is a very dangerous thing for the families and for the country, I believe. So if you possibly can make that rally, it would be nice to show some support. Yes,
Time.
what's that? Time is noontime. Be there early. We're hoping to have a good crowd. I'm hoping and praying for good weather, and then we'll have a good turnout. The other side always manages to turn out a lot of people. The other thing that you can do if you can't possibly be there is just go into nhmarriage.org. There's a link in there that you can hit on and sign a petition that you are for marriage between a man and a woman in the state of New Hampshire. That's all I have, Pat. Thank you.
No, that's great. We appreciate your effort, and we all remember Frank Harton, how Frank fought for the defense of marriage, and how we had that one go-around in the town hall down here, and we wanted, I was involved in it. We had something like 70 people vote, for the right to be able to say, listen, this is what traditional marriage is, and there are probably 29 against, but they are well organized and come in from all over, and they'll try to change things that it's not a legitimate vote, so it's a big issue. And that is a basis of freedom, is traditional marriage within the protective sheath of private property, which is paramount. That's why that's under attack. It's nothing new, and I get off on these things because as my historical brain starts thinking, but then somebody asked me something about that last week, and I said, you have to understand it going back over 100 years ago, assaults on marriage were primary in the Russian Revolution. If you look back, there was an organization called Agenda Phil, and the woman that ran that came out with it. She made publications and was going to be in charge of destruction of marriage in the country. When you read the publications, they're about multiple forms of sexuality. And the idea was, if you attack traditional religion, you make, they call it the glass of water theory. If you make it so common, then eventually what happens is the bond between man and woman is less. It's easier for the state to enter the household and destroy the strength of that household and make the state all powerful. So it's not something that's brand new. It's old and is a weapon, particularly. It was a particular weapon in the Soviet Union. And if you look at that process, you had once the families were singled out for destruction, as particularly conservative males initially, and wives and kids against the conservative male. That within 10 years, children flushed out both parents. So, but I'm just saying, that's such a big issue that people think it's just you're being unfair, or it has nothing to do with that. Private property, people do what they want to do, but that traditional institution is absolutely paramount. It's unbelievably important to what we are are trying to do here. It's going to be a battle. It's not going to stop. I mean, it's huge. And I will do a thing in here on Agenda 21 and on marriage and on the International Baccalaureate and the entire process and show you things that, and every time that I look at it, I almost fall out of my chair because it's so far along, it's so big. But this is a real positive meeting in here tonight. We have a lot of good speakers. We got one more speaker, that's Cliff Hurst, sitting right here. Cliff, come on out. Good to see you here. Again.
You know, I used to really like Andy. I love Bart. And Phil's all right too. And Patrick, of course. But in 2003, I wasn't that involved. I'd helped in some campaigns. I'd worked for the Blasey Corporation. We built roads all over northern New England. And so I traveled a lot and didn't really know a lot of local people. But Ray Wazorek came to me one day and he said, the city committee in Manchester is really in trouble and I think you can help us. Well, I really didn't know much about what a committee was, but we started out and I did the year and it wasn't really that good. So at the end of the year, we were leaving the meeting and I said, Ray Wazorek, I said, well, I've done my year. He said, I know you have. But he said, you got one more year. He said, you've been talking about electing a Republican mayor in Manchester, and if you aren't here, we won't do it. So we were able to put together an excellent committee, which is really a key to getting anything done. Nothing happens alone. It happens with a lot of people. And so we started working. I sat with Frank Kinta, made fundraising calls, committed to visit 1,000 homes. And the Saturday before the election, we had over 100 people show up. And we won the election. Nobody believed we could win. When we were having the celebration, we had to wait 20 minutes for the press to arrive. But Frank won. And so that was a good year. In the process, I met the state party. Jane Miller called me one day and said, would you host the governor of Arkansas? And that was Mike Huckabee. And I met him and saw, you talk about growing up poor. I grew up in a small town in Vermont, not that there are any big towns there. But it was, I mean, we were so poor. I mean, we had no car, no phone, most of the time no running water. The Center for Northern Studies was there in almost no time, no heat. But things changed when I was just going to high school. And John Blasey, who was the leader of the Blasey Corporation, convinced my father to go to work for him. And it changed our whole life. And so anyway, then I went along and co-chaired the Huckabee campaign. And then at the end of that, I was very ill and I didn't know what was wrong. And I remember we were going up to Dartmouth for him to speak one night and I hardly could make it. But I didn't want to stop because I knew if I stopped, I wouldn't be able to continue. But after the campaign was over, I ended up in the hospital with a serious case of prostate cancer. But today I'm probably the healthiest I've been in years. And I'm so excited about helping the state party. Again, Ray Wazorek came to me and we were sitting at the Manchester Country Club the other day and he said, Cliff, you know, that was before he was announced he was retiring. He said, you know, I'm 83 years old. You know, I wanted to have some time to go to Florida and do some things along with Andy. And, but he said, you know, the state party really needs help. And he said, you know, 2010 I came back and did the city committee again. They were having 11 or 12 people meeting at Murphy's Tap Room. They had no Lincoln Reagan dinner that year, and I just said, you know, I've got to come back. We involved over 1,000 people in 2010 in the Manchester Republican Committee. We set a record for most fundraising that the committee had ever had. And we were able to help change the representation in the House too. I hope those people are doing good for you. but we went from about 7 or 8 to about 26 or 7, I think. And we had a fundraiser, and we came up with the idea of having a New Hampshire button, Make It Right in 2010. We had a candidate fair, and over 600 people showed up for that event. And we sold these buttons for $20.10 a piece as an entrance in, and raised over $11,000 that day. But it was because we had creative people and with good ideas. And so I'm looking forward to running. In fact, I just announced, and we released a press release yesterday, for Vice Chair of the State Republican Committee. And I see the people that we have here. I mean, great leaders, seriously. In our Speaker and our Senator, our representatives, and our leader here. And I would appreciate your help. I made some phone calls 2 weeks ago after I talked to Ray, and I called about 60 people, and I started out by saying, I am thinking of running. At the end, I said, I am running. And I've found support throughout the state. It's a very humbling experience when you do this, but I would really appreciate your help in becoming the Vice Chair of the party. And some of the things that I think we need to do, we need to build a larger staff, because we have some good people there, but it's not an adequate staff. And we're unable to really confront the situations that come up that the state party should be able to do. And so we got to raise some money and, of course, continue to find good candidates. But I thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I really believe strongly in conservative values, and I'm glad to hear you talk about marriage. And I think these are important things, but we need to get the state turned around and